Hey everybody, this is Izam and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do a book, create a book, and there's going to be an animation where we can see the page flipping. So it's going to be a short one, so just follow me. We're going to use Voxedit, so make sure you open up Voxedit. I have Voxedit open right now, and the first thing we're going to do is click on create new asset. Inside my Voxedit folder, you can keep it in any folder, so I'm keeping it here. So I'm typing in book and save. Okay, so here let's click on here, this option here, and click create child node and type in controller. Now we need this controller because then if we were to use this model inside a game platform like the sandbox game, they can identify a model as an animation and they can control this, okay, control the animations. Okay, so then click create child node and type in book. Next, within this book node, click here and click on create child node and name it as base. So this will be the base, the book itself, half of the book. And then click on the book node again, create child node and type in page. And within this page node, click on create child node and type in part 1. Alright, now next let's go to the library, and at the library option click on create new VXM, type in base. So this is where we will be drawing the book. So for the y-axis type in 2, and for the x-axis type in 8, and the z-axis type in 10. Okay, next make sure you have this on, the create mode, and select the screen rec tool and click and drag over this. So now we have all these blocks. We're going to change the color, use the paint tool and the box tool, use this brown color, click the plus sign and change the color to a darker brown. Color the bottom part here like this. So make sure that the whole thing below here is all brown. Next thing, click here and click the plus sign. We're gonna make an off-white color, like a beige color. Use the paint tool and then use the paint bucket tool, click here. That's it. Next, we are going to use this eraser tool and erase this part. Make sure you click on the box tool, click erase this side so that we can see that the cover of the book is sticking out like this, and this is the page. We're going to write some stuff on this page, so just use this color, choose this color here, and just paint like this. Just draw some blocks, and that's about it. Yeah. Okay, now cancel this first. Okay, so now click this pivot tool and make sure you set the pivot to 0 for all the axes. Okay, 0. Now save, go back and save. So now we have one part of the book, so click and drag and place it in the base node. So we have here the book. We need to duplicate this, so go ahead and duplicate and call it base 2. And now click this base 2 and drag it on the base node so that the base 2 is nested inside the base node. So then next, rotate this base 2 180 degrees like this, and then we'll move it back so that it is side by side. to the base, the original base. The reason for this is because the pivot point is here, such that when we rotate, it will rotate like this. Okay, so I'm gonna undo that. All right, so make sure you save your work. Now the next thing that we need to do is to create the page. So to create the page is quite easy. What we need to do is just duplicate this base and call it page. Now let's edit this page here. So we have 2 blocks high like this, 1, 2. We need to select all of this, use the select tool, use the screen drag tool, and select all of this. Now click on the green arrow and push it down like that, such that the top layer will now be at the bottom. Now you can type in 1 here. So it's just 1 cube thick. We have some extra space here. So this side we don't need, so we just lower this size to 7. Alright, it's done. So check your pivot tool, make sure it's still 0, 0, 0. But instead of 0 on the y-axis, move this up to make it 0.5. Alright, so that is done. Go back, click yes. So now we can have the page to be put into the node called part 1. But we need to duplicate this page because we're going to have 3 parts to this page. So go ahead and click on duplicate and call this part 2. And duplicate part 2, call it part 3. Okay, now page, drag this page model into part 1. Now click on part 1, click on the move tool. Now drag this model here until it is here in the same position as the page on the base model, like that. Now let's test this. Okay, I'm just going to click on the rotation tool and then rotate like that and see if it fits. Okay, so it fits the next page. Alright, so just leave it there. But now, because we need to divide this page into 3 parts, so the best way to see it is when it is upright like this. So rotate to 90 degrees. And now, click here, the edit button. We're going to crop this page. So because the size is 7 blocks on the x-axis, so when we divide it by 3, it's not going to be equally divided. So it's going to be 2 blocks for the first part, 2 blocks for the second part, and the part 3 will be 3 blocks high. So for this, we just change this number from 7 to become 2. So now we have 2 blocks here. So that's it for part 1. So go back, click yes. Alright, so that's the first part of the page 1 of the page. We now need to duplicate this part 1. Click here, duplicate node, and call it part 2. Click and drag part 2 and nest it inside part 1. But now the location and the rotation, it's all messed up. It's all different now. So what you need to do is go to inspector, click on reset, and click on reset for the rotation as well. Now let's move this part 2 so that it sits nicely on top of part 1. So go back to the library, get part 2 model, drag it into the part 2 node. Okay, now click on the edit button. So since we already have the first 2 blocks for part 1 already, so we need to move this 1, 2 over this side. So use this select tool and the screen wrap tool. Select all of this. Now move this to the right side. So click on the red arrow, move it by 2 cubes. 1, 2. Now just change this from 7 to 2. And now we have part 2. Go back, click yes, save. So that's done. Here, part 2, duplicate this node and call it part 3. Again, click and drag into part 2 to nest it in there. And use this part 3, click and drag it and put it inside part 3. Good. Now click edit. So now we already have used 1, 2, 3, 4 for part 1 and part 2. So what's left is 1, 2, 3, this much here for part 3. So let's move it. Click on the select tool, screen rec tool, select all. Now this time move it to the left. 1, 2, 3. And change this from 7 to 3. And we're done. And our page is complete. Now let's rest. Let's rotate part 1 and move it back downwards like that. Okay, so our page is done. Now we're going to animate this. So to animate, I would like you to focus your attention to this side on the right side at the bottom where it says animations. You can see that the current animation is called idle, where nothing moves. So let's create a new animation. We call it flip. Okay, so now that we have flip, I want you to focus your attention on this area here and click and drag this thing where you will see zoom area. So zoom out so we can see 1 second, 2 seconds, and 3 seconds. Alright, so now that you can see that, this is what we're going to do. Move your timeline header here, this pointer, this yellow colored pointer, to the 3-second mark and click here. This button here creates a new keyframe. When you click here, it creates a new keyframe for all of these layers, all of these objects. Alright, okay, now at the 2.5 second mark, we are going to add another keyframe. So use this button here and click. So we have a new keyframe here. Now move the header here 1 step forward. Okay, we are going to change the position of page of the part 1. So make sure you select part 1, select the rotation tool and move. Press and hold your shift button on your keyboard so that it can rotate at an increment of 5 degrees. So I'm going to rotate to 15 degrees and then click on part 2. I'm going to rotate this down to 355 degrees and click on part 3. Rotate this down to 350 degrees. Now you can see that there's a gap here, right? So let's use the move tool and make sure you click on part 3 and move it to the right, close the gap. For part 2, click on part 2 and move this, close the gap. Okay, so let's see, when we scrub this timeline, you can see how it's gonna move. Okay, I think so far so good. Now move this timeline header to here, between this point and 3 seconds. Alright, we're going to rotate part 1. So use the rotation tool, drag like that. Okay, and then this part 2, click on part 2, click and drag to about 340 degrees. Click on part 3. Click and drag down to 335 degrees. Alright, as you can see, there's a gap here. Just close it. Close the gap. It's jutting out like this, so bring it down. Okay, do the same for part 2. Get it closer and bring it down. Okay, to zoom in, use the scroll wheel on your mouse. Okay, let's look at the animation. So it moves like that. Okay, so now we are at this timeline. So move here, all right, in between this point just now to here, right in the middle. So click on part 1, rotate, and rotate like this. And then click on part 2, rotate down. Part 3, rotate down like that. Close the gaps. You see this? Use the move tool and bring it closer. And try to make sure that there are no gaps. Click on part 2 and then move closer. Okay, so let's test the animation. Move. Okay, and the last frame. For the last frame, use part 1. Click rotate and drag it down like that, 180 degrees. That's it. Alright, so if you play the animation, just click here, the play button. Flip. So there's a delay for about 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds, then the page will flip. Alright, you can actually control the speed, how long the page will take. So you can actually drag this keyframes maybe to 2 seconds at a 2-second time here, and then move these as well. To vary the speed like that. You can experiment with this. See, like that. Alright, so that's it for today's tutorial. So I've shown you how to create a book and create an animation for the page flipping effect. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one where we will be creating a human being. Alright, see you then. Goodbye.